Hey guys, this is God of Politics. I'm coming to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter, that'll be linked down in the description, also on my channel page, and join the Discord that is also linked down in the description. But today's video, I'm going to be answering the question, which is the same question that I answered yesterday, except with a different candidate. That is, can Joe Biden win the election without the Rust Belt? Yesterday's video, I answered the question whether Donald Trump can win without the Rust Belt, and the answer is yes, he can. He can win Nevada, he can win New Hampshire, and he could still survive even if Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania flipped into the Republican column. But now we're going to be doing the election. Can Joe Biden win if Wisconsin stay with Trump, Michigan stay with Trump, Pennsylvania stays with Trump, and even Minnesota flips to Trump, even in that scenario? We'll talk about that a little bit. But can Joe Biden still win in that scenario? We're going to be going through that, but first we'll start off with these safe states: Idaho, Utah, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. We'll just be going through all the safe states here. All of Nebraska except for the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Alaska, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina. That puts Donald Trump at 125 safe electoral votes. And for Joe Biden, it is California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Hawaii, Maine's 1st District, New York, Illinois, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C. That's 183 safe electoral votes for Joe Biden and 125 safe electoral votes for Donald Trump. So we're just going to be filling in the rest of the map here. You can just put in Texas at a likely margin for Donald Trump, Colorado, New Mexico likely margins for Joe Biden, Iowa and Ohio at likely margins. We'll put Nebraska second at a tilt margin here. We'll put Virginia at a likely margin. We'll put New Hampshire at a lean margin. We'll put Maine at large at a lean margin. We'll put Maine second at a likely margin. This is kind of just filling in how the general consensus is going to be. And then we'll give Wisconsin by a lean margin, Minnesota by a tilt margin, Michigan by a tilt margin, and Pennsylvania by a lean margin. So that puts Donald Trump already at 245 electoral votes here. From here, you can give Georgia to Donald Trump. You can give Georgia to Donald Trump in the say lean column, and he's only at 261. You can give Joe Biden New Hampshire here, put it in the lean margin there. You can give him Nevada, state that Hillary Clinton won. You would have to give him Arizona, a state that has been trending towards the Democratic column for a couple years now, 6 years, 6 to 8 years now. This is a state that is very competitive. It could go to Joe Biden either way, but in a scenario that he loses the Rust Belt, he's going to have to win the state of Arizona here. The next state that he's going to have to win at all costs, I think, is the state of Florida. He would have to win the state of Florida, where it's 29 electoral votes here, and then he'd also have to win the state of North Carolina. So Florida is the state that people always talk about. It's going to go to the incumbent because it voted for George H.W. Bush in 1992 against Bill Clinton, for example. And then, sure, yeah, it does tend to like incumbents, but in 2018 it also did flip a Senate seat. It's been prone to wave years. It's been immune, sorry, to wave years as well. So it's a very weird state. It's very independent on the way the rest of the country is going. If Donald Trump has a bad night, he could still win Florida. If Donald Trump has a good night, he could lose Florida. You really don't know when it comes to the state of Florida. But if Joe Biden does lose the Rust Belt, it means that he's going to be doing quite bad with working class voters, and also probably quite bad in terms of turnout, in terms of African American turnout, which could hurt him in the state of North Carolina, but I did put that as blue. But the state of Florida is a very independent state, and he could win that as well. The state of North Carolina has a lot of suburbs, but it does also have a lot of rural areas that have been trending towards the red column. Whether Joe Biden can get enough of the suburban trends on his side to counteract the rural trends that are coming towards the red column here, that is a question that we'll have to answer. But right now we can see that there is a very clear path in terms of getting to victory. And this kind of downplays the whole notion that the Rust Belt is the be-all and end-all of this election. And I do believe that Michigan is a pretty solid flip for Joe Biden, whether you like it or not. In that scenario, you can take away Florida and just give Minnesota back, and Joe Biden's won. That's a very realistic scenario, in my opinion. He just flipped, actually, give back North Carolina here, give back North Carolina, and give him Pennsylvania, or even given Wisconsin and Nebraska's second district, which is another really likely scenario. But in this scenario, we're talking about how Joe Biden can do it without winning the Rust Belt, and it is very possible. It is very possible because in the good side for Donald Trump could win Arizona, he could even win Nevada, he could win New Hampshire here, and then you see he's got an electoral landslide of 326. This is kind of where I believe that he maxes out. Um, but if you're looking at Joe Biden, he could win the state of Nevada, he could win the state of New Hampshire, he could win the state of Arizona, he could win the state of Florida, he could win the state of North Carolina, and then this is another one actually people aren't really watching out for, the state of Georgia. You look at things like Gwinnett County and Cobb County, they've trended so heavily to the Democratic column at this point that, when will this stop? Will the Democrats keep gaining? They don't really have to gain too much in these areas to actually flip the state. And that's a state that people should actually watch out for. And if you want to look at an electoral landslide for the Democrats, they can win Michigan, win Minnesota, win Wisconsin, and win Pennsylvania here. And that would be a huge result here. They're approaching 350 electoral votes here, along with Nebraska's second district, would get them to 350 electoral votes. But that's really not what we're talking about at this point. It does show that there can be landslides on both sides. There can be landslides for the GOP and there can be landslides for the Democrats. The Democratic landslides are bigger. But what that does show is that you can win in many different regions. This is a battleground map that is larger than what we've seen in quite a long time because the trends that we're seeing in many of these states are kind of all meeting at a crossroads at this point. We see that the suburban trends of states like Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina are coming into play to help the Democrats win. But the rural trends and the legacy Dems turning away from the Democrats are also making the state in play in the Rust Belt. And so it's going to be a very important thing to watch out for this election. But it's one important thing to note that I'm just making these two videos about for. It's the one thing to note that you don't need to actually win the Rust Belt to win this election. You could lose the whole Rust Belt and still win the election. And like I said before, I do believe that Michigan is a pretty likely flip, meaning that North Carolina, which I've put in the Democratic column but isn't as likely as some of these other states, Joe Biden could still win without the state of North Carolina. He could even win without the state of Nevada. He's still at 272 electoral votes there. And so, honestly, this is bad news for Republicans that there's an expanding battleground map because the less states there are that Donald Trump has to defend, the better. Because, Donald Trump's going to have to be going to the Rust Belt all the time. He's going to have to be going to Georgia. He's going to have to be going to Florida. He's going to have to be going to North Carolina. He's going to have to be going to Arizona if he wants to expand his battleground map. He's going to have to go to states like Nevada and New Hampshire. And this is a huge battleground map because you're talking about states that campaigns will actually visit. You're looking at Nevada, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're looking at 11 at the very minimum here, unless Donald Trump decides to give up on a state like Michigan. And so this is honestly very worrying for the Trump campaign. Can he win some of these places that aren't in the Rust Belt? Because an expanding battleground map means that he's trying to defend states that are very different demographically. If he does better with Hispanics, he might do better in a state like Texas or Arizona. But he could also at the same time do worse with those legacy Dems. Some of those legacy Dems could go back to the Democratic Party and lose him the Rust Belt, and then he loses the election because the odds are he's not going to win every single one of the battleground states, every single one of the states that he pulled off in 2016, because in 2016 he was an underdog in all those states, and he's looking to be an underdog in most of these states today, and that's really going to be very detrimental to him. But getting back to the topic of whether Joe Biden can win without the Rust Belt, just to kind of wrap this all up, yes, he can win without the Rust Belt. Is it as difficult as Donald Trump winning without the Rust Belt? No, it's not, because there's more room for him to have states to flip. That includes Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, even putting it at a stretch to Georgia. And so, yeah, that's a very realistic scenario. But yeah, so thank you all for watching this video. Please like and subscribe as always. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and I will see you guys later.